How many of you read your Bible every day? I do. In Sunday school this morning, I was reminded of something when I was a kid. I grew up in church. I cannot remember not going to church when I was a kid. My parents brought me to church all the time. If our local church didn't have something going on, we were traveling upwards of 2 to 3 hours away and we're going to church. My parents also incentivized me to not only read, but to memorize large sections of the Bible, specifically with money. Yep, my parents paid me to memorize the Bible. Specifically, they would pay me $10 for every 10 verses I memorized in sequence. And like a lot of kids I know, I was kind of greedy. So I memorized a lot of the Bible. Now, to memorize something, there's different ways to do it, right? You can read it over and over and over and over again. You can get some memory aids, some mnemonics, right? Put it to song. Some of our songs come from the Bible. We even have a huge book right in the middle called Psalms, which is a bunch of songs, right? But it had to get in, right? Not only did it have to get in, but it had to affect me. And for a long time, it didn't. I was not a Christian growing up. I could put on a good show. I could do the act, but I was not a disciple of Jesus. And then when I was in college one day, a professor accused me of being a Christian. And I told him I was not one. And he said, that can't be true because you talk like one, you act like one, and you act like all the other Christians I've ever had in my class. You have to be a Christian. And I said, I am not a Christian because I am not a disciple of Jesus. I don't do what he says. I know who he is. I know about him, but I don't follow him. Therefore, I'm not a Christian. And the professor looked at me and goes, maybe you need to rethink your life choices. And he told me to get out of his office. So, this morning, some of us may need to rethink our life choices. If you have it, please follow with me. By the way, if you did not bring a Bible, we have them for you. They're in the pews. Feel free and use them. They are definitely for your use. Also, the best English translation of the Christian Bible is the one you read. So, read it often. Starting in the 12th chapter of 1 Corinthians. A little preface there. Corinthians, this letter by Paul and company, is written to Christians. It's not written to the general population of the city. It is not written to the greater region. It is not written to the Roman Empire. It is written to Christians. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be ignorant. I am reading from the New King James Version. You know that you were Gentiles, carried away by these dumb idols. However, you were led. Therefore, I make known to you that no one speaking by the Spirit of God calls Jesus accursed, and no one can say that Jesus is Lord except by the Holy Spirit. There are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works in all and all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another Gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another different kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. Go ahead and flip over to Hebrews chapter 10. I'm going to be reading from the 19th verse. Hebrews, by the way, is a letter as well, and it is written to the Hebrews. I know, naming conventions are amazing in the Bible, aren't they? We have the first letter to the Corinthian Christians named 1 Corinthians. We have a letter written to Hebrews named Hebrews. It was most likely written, we do not know the exact authorship of this letter, but it was most likely written by first or second generation disciples of Paul. It has a lot of Paul-esque type writing, but it does not have his typical greeting or closing. But it was written primarily to Hebrews, to Jews, and to the rest of us secondarily. So, starting in the 19th verse. Therefore, brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, hold on. Yeah. Sorry, I lost my place. By a new and living way, which he concentrated for us through the veil, that is his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. For if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fiery indignation, which will devour the adversaries. One thing that sticks out here is that word exhortation. Usually when I read exhortation with a T. Have you ever been extorted from? But that's not what's being said here. It's exhorting. It's to build up, to lift up, to encourage. And these are written to individuals. When I say you from the pulpit, I'm not just referring to you individually. I'm speaking to you. But I'm also referring to me. I'm not in a bubble. There's no cage up here. I'm not protected. It's like looking in the mirror and going, you. Have you ever done that? Have you ever looked in the mirror and went, you idiot? Right? That's the same thing here. I once knew a pastor. He put a mirror in the back of the auditorium where he preached, in the church where he preached at. He put a mirror above the back door on the center aisle. And I asked him one time, we were cleaning the church together, and I asked him what the mirror was doing there. And he goes, simple. So I can talk to myself in the mirror when I'm preaching. Because usually I need a good chewing. And I always got a kick out of that. A few Sundays ago, we had a guest speaker up here with a potter's wheel. It was great. He molded the clay. He got his hands pretty dirty. He had quite a bit of force used. And he related that to how we are pots. We are the clay. We are vessels. Different spirit, same gifts. I'm going to be honest, I do not know how to use a chainsaw. Never used a chainsaw. A lot of people I know think that's kind of odd. I've never used a chainsaw. I don't know how to use a chainsaw. I don't even know how to start a chainsaw. And I have no experience in that. But I know there are people in this church right now who are very skilled with a chainsaw. They have that skill. I don't have it. But we're all vessels for his purpose. You might be wondering why I have Dr. Pepper up here. It's because sometimes I get thirsty. Some of you might not like Dr. Pepper, but I do. I like Dr. Pepper. I find it delicious. Dr. Pepper is the oldest national brand of soda pop in the United States. It's been around the longest. Legend has it that it was developed by a pharmacist, and he had 23 flavors that he could put into different medicine. And when people would come in and go, I don't care, give me something, make it taste better, he would give them a shot of every single flavor. That's the legend anyway. I find that hilarious. 23 flavors. Different flavors all working together creates Dr. Pepper. At some point in time, this bottle had to be made. Had to be designed. It had to be created, a prototype. Kind of like a guy named Adam. Prototype. Made. Right? And every single bottle after that needs to be this bottle, right? Otherwise, it's not going to go through the equipment very well. It's not going to get bottled very well. It's certainly not going to hold the Dr. Pepper very well if it's not this bottle, right? Maybe it's this can. Some of you are like this can. Cans have been around for a very long time. You can stack these really high without them crushing. They're extremely well designed. They hold the same Dr. Pepper. Right? But they serve a different purpose, don't they? Cans came out first. Some of you can remember the first time a shovel hit the ground where we're seated today. It was in 1991. 1990, actually. Groundbreaking. That says on the building. 1990. It's completed in 91. Some of you were involved in the planning process for this building. Some of you may have been involved in the planning process for the building across the street that used to be the church. Kind of like this can. You've been around a long time. But you still need to have the same Dr. Pepper in you, same spirit, different gifts, different purpose. By the way, there are times I like drinking Dr. Pepper from a can because it tastes different than from a bottle. Have you ever noticed that? It tastes different. Something about the can. Have you ever been around somebody who has been a Christian, a disciple of Christ for a very long time? You know they've seen things. They've experienced things. You know they have a relationship with Christ. And there's just something different about listening to them, letting them pour into you. Some of you are like this can. Still have purpose, still have meaning, still have a place here at 6 Points. But some of you aren't quite that can. You might be this can. This is a nice big helping of Dr. Pepper, 12 ounces. I remember when I was a kid and my grandma would give me a full can of pop, I was like, what? Right? Well, at some point in time, somebody came around and was like, that's a lot of pop for little kids. Might be a little too much. Cheryl, you know what I'm talking about. So they came out with these. These are like a shot of goodness. 7.5 ounces. Same type of can. Same nice refreshment, right? But in just the right size to tip it back and keep going, right? Some of you have been around a long time. So long, in fact, you're like this 2-liter. Have you ever tried drinking from a 2-liter? Like straight from the 2-liter? It's kind of heavy. It's kind of bulky. Doesn't really fit in the hand very well, does it? I mean, you can do it. Usually when I try to do it, I wait till it's almost empty first. Otherwise, I tend to get more on me than in me. But 2 liters were designed to be shared. They were designed to be poured out into other vessels and shared. Same Dr. Pepper, same 23 flavors. But instead of being a single use, single serve, poured into one person, it was designed to be shared among many. Some of you have that. God wants you to be shared among many through all kinds of different ways. Not just pouring into one person specifically, but everyone you meet. Then we have this one. It's 1.25 liters. It's big enough to share, but it's designed to fit in your hand. Check that out. So if you got a long day, you might choose this one, right? But you can still share. You can pour quite a bit into one person, but you can also pour into others. Notice they're all different, right? Nice thing about a bottle, it's resealable. You can drink a little now, save a little for later. Can, not so much. I was at Autumn Leaf a couple years ago. I had a can of Dr. Pepper sitting on my display. I was talking to someone, not paying any attention. I went to take a drink, and a bee had flown into my Dr. Pepper and stung the inside of my mouth. That's not a problem with a bottle, is it? Because I can put a cap on it, right? But that doesn't mean the can doesn't have purpose. That doesn't mean the bottle's better than the can, right? It means they're built for different purposes. They're designed for different reasons. And each and every one of you are designed by God for a purpose and a reason. Some might be to heal people. Some might be words of wisdom or encouragement. Some might be to teach. Some might be to preach. Some might be for prophecy. Paul lists a bunch of different things that the Spirit does through people. I remember when the 20-ounce bottle first came out. I looked at it and thought it was huge, because before that, they were only 16 ounces. Any of you guys remember that? I got 4 more ounces of pop for the same price. I was like, yes, score, right? By the way, I could not find any 16-ounce bottles, but I did find a 16.9-ounce bottle. Comes in a 6-pack usually, right? But one thing you notice about all of these is it's Dr. Pepper, right? Paul spends a lot of time with the Corinthians talking about the Spirit of God and how it works and through and in them and works in through us. Hebrews carries this on, but adds that last part. For if we sin willfully after we've received the knowledge of the truth, there is no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. You see, when I was a teenager, I could put on a good show. That college professor assumed I was a Christian, even though I was not. I had the right label. I had the right shape. I had the right curvature. I had the right cap. I had the right seal. I even had the right color liquid in me. Right? But did I have the Spirit of God? No. And when asked, I was honest. Nope, I don't. But some of you may not be honest this morning, whether you're online or here in person. You may have the right label. You even have the right calorie count on the side. You might have the right cap, the right seal. You might have the right color of liquid in you. You might even have carbonation. What? I saw that look. You know what happens, don't you? What happens when the stresses of life show up? The pressure, the shaking. What happens? Don't do it. Don't do it. That's right. Right? We know what happens, right? And the same thing happens with us. When our world shakes, we get the pressure going. By the way, if you try to squeeze this right now, it's really hard to do. But it's not as hard as this one, because of all that pressure built up in there, right? And eventually, I'm not going to do it. But eventually, it's going to burst. And pop is going to go all over everything. Right? Whatever is in you when you burst is going to affect and cover everything and everyone around you. Whether it's the Spirit of God or it's something else. There is a deceiver out here in the world. Sometimes we are our own deceivers. Other times it's the devil to deceive us. Paul says, I would not have you deceived. I want you to know the truth. So I have a volunteer this morning. You know how to make sure that's Dr. Pepper? You got to taste it and see, right? There's a psalmist that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see. So I had a volunteer this morning, a young man. He volunteered to taste and see. Taste and see.
It tastes like Dr. Pepper.
Tastes like Dr. Pepper. All right. You got to taste and see, right? By the way, anybody know what the punishment for a false prophet in the Old Testament was? Immediate death. Yeah. Execution. Right on the spot. See, I have a responsibility when I take the stage to give you the truth. You have a responsibility to make sure that I'm telling you the truth. That's a pretty big deal. If a prophet in the Old Testament was found to be a false prophet, they were to be executed immediately. I don't want to be a false prophet, but I have to rely on you to taste it and see. Is it true? And if it is true, then we have to ask ourselves, are we going to accept it and follow, or are we going to choose to reject? Still good? Yeah. Must have been Dr. Pepper. He's down in that little can. All right. You want to taste it and see? All right. That must not have been enough. Have you ever not had enough of God? I do daily. I want more. Right? Sometimes that little can is not enough. So you get what you can from a mentor or someone, right? Notice that nice sound, right? Almost refreshing just hearing it, right? But at some point in time, you find someone else that you can have poured into you, right? Okay, so taste that one. Is that good?
Yeah.
Is it Dr. Pepper?
Yeah.
You sure? You positive that's Dr. Pepper? You should probably try it again. What was that?
Doesn't taste like Dr. Pepper.
Doesn't taste like Dr. Pepper. Interesting. Does it look like Dr. Pepper? Does the label say Dr. Pepper? And you tasted it, right? But it doesn't taste like Dr. Pepper? You heard that sound, right? Looks like Dr. Pepper, fizzes like Dr. Pepper, but doesn't taste like Dr. Pepper. Brethren, I'd have you not be deceived. I do not want you to be ignorant. Travis knows that's not actually real Dr. Pepper. Now, if that was his first time ever tasting Dr. Pepper, would he know if that's real Dr. Pepper or not? No. He knows it's not Dr. Pepper because he's already been poured into. Right? He's already had the real Dr. Pepper. So he knows that's a fake. Right? By the way, spoiler alert, he's right. It's a fake. It's Coca-Cola. It's Coca-Cola. It's not the real Dr. Pepper. However, the only way for Travis to know that's not the real Dr. Pepper is to taste it and see, right? Because otherwise it looks like it, acts like it, it's labeled it, right? The only way to find out is to taste it and see. The only way to find out if it's the real Spirit of God is to test him. And he says, test me. But before you go testing God, you should probably find out what the real God is and let it be poured into you. Because we're vessels. That's it. We're just vessels. And all of us are designed for him. His glory. Not ours. Not yours. Not mine. His. His glory. To be used as he pleases. But what happens if we have an empty bottle and life shakes it up? Does anything come out? Is the bottle any good? Some of you might be feeling empty. Maybe it's because you've tasted and you've found a fake. I have before. It hurts. You find yourself empty. Guess what? Got good news. These are recyclable. In their current condition. If you call this 188 number on the bottle, pretty sure it's on the can. Yep, same number on the can. You can set up a range for Dr. Pepper's Bottling Company to refill the bottles in the cans and reseal them. That's pretty amazing. They don't have to smash them. They go through the bottling company, they get cleaned and refilled. Notice they get cleaned first, then refilled. Some of you need cleaned because some of you are dirty. Let's be honest. Need a good washing. The author of Hebrews puts it, find it here. Having our hearts sprinkled from evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. The bottling company for Dr. Pepper, they do not use distilled water. They don't use tap water. They use purified water to clean the bottles and the cans. You need to get clean before you get filled. Because what happens if we don't clean that bottle that has Coca-Cola in it before we start putting Dr. Pepper in it? It's going to be contaminated. It's not going to be the real thing. And then when we get shaken up and we get stirred up by life and stress, the real Spirit of God isn't going to come out. It's going to make one sticky mess. Right? Some of you need washed. Some of you need filled. Some of you need to be poured out into others. Have you ever poured a 2-liter bottle and had a little too much pressure and it splashes everywhere and doesn't actually get in the cup? Makes a mess. You got to have the right amount of pressure, the right hold. Generally, that's with 2 hands, just like my parents taught me, right? Gentle, right? Because if you start getting all It's going to make a mess, right? Spill all over. So this morning, you're going to have an opportunity, just like every day. And that opportunity is pretty simple. There's only one place you can get real Dr. Pepper that's not in a bottle or in a bag, but straight from the source. By the way, if you want to know what the 23 flavors that are in Dr. Pepper, good luck. It's a trade secret. It's a trade secret. The 23 flavors Dr. Pepper uses to make their distinct flavor is a trade secret. There's only one place to get it. It's at their headquarters office. Good luck. Right? There's only one place to get real Dr. Pepper that's not already been bottled. It's at the bottling plant. The good news is there's only one place to get the real Spirit of God. By the way, it is not at 6 Points. Some of you just went, wait, what? Because isn't that why you're here? Because this is a house of God to come to church, right? But guess what? It's not 6 Points. That's not the source. 6 Points is more like a distributor, right? This church is more like a distributor. We need volunteers to help get the word out, right? We're like the advertising company. We are not the source. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if I am the source for your righteousness, I got really bad news for you. Don't want to disappoint you, but you're going to be disappointed. Okay? The good news is the veil has been torn. By the way, if you keep reading in Hebrews, this is exactly what the author of Hebrews is saying. This is exactly what he says. He goes immediately into living by faith and understanding the sacrifice of Christ. Paul does too. You can go straight to the source. So you're going to have the opportunity to get the real thing. Not my word for it, not anyone else's word for it, but right from him. I don't know a better teacher. So, this morning, no matter where you're at in life, no matter what your shape is, no matter what has happened to you, is that can empty? Good. Excellent. No matter what has happened to you, some of you might feel or look like this can. Is this can going to hold a lot of Dr. Pepper now? No. Some of you are like this. But guess what? You can go to the source and get refilled. Put back into shape. You can still have that. Because God's not done with you. When I was a kid, at one of the children's programs I went to, there was a theme called Kids Under Construction. And there was a little ditty. We're just kids under construction. We're not done yet. We're just kids under construction. He's not finished with me yet. Well, guess what? We're all still kids. Yes, even Shirley. Still kids. Because we're still kids. We're still his children. So let people who are older and wiser than you, more mature than you, pour into you. And pour into others. Be that refreshing drink for the benefit of all. We need each and every one of you. Might need someone with a chainsaw. That's not me. No matter what skills you have, no matter what talents you have, no matter what resources you have, they're all there for the glory of God. So are you being used for His glory? Do you have the real Spirit in you? And is it pouring out into others? So, if not, today is a good day to get that to happen. So, the altars are open. Okay. If you'd like to come and pray, you may. If you'd like one of us to pray with you, just ask. I'd love to pray with you. And spend time. Because if you don't spend time with God, don't be surprised when you don't find Him very close. He is. He's everywhere. But just like Travis had to taste and see that it was good with the Dr. Pepper, so he could identify the fake one. Notice it took him a little bit. He was like, wait, no, it isn't. The closer you get to God, the easier it is to identify the fake. So come, pray. You can pray where you're at. You can pray online. You can pray at the altar. You can get up and leave. It's up to you. But I would not have you deceived.